Shalom Israel, grace and mercy from God the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ be unto you. All praises to the Most High that we made it another week to another Sabbath day. All right, so I just want to start by giving all praises, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father. I do so in the name of His only begotten Son, and I do so by His Holy Ghost, without which we would not be able to give the sense of the word or have any understanding thereof. So with all that being said, I do just want to make sure everything's functioning properly. It looks like it is, at least on my end. Let me check the viewers end as well, and then we'll go ahead and get into it. Let me check. I'll check YouTube first. How are we doing? Are we live? We appear to be live. I'll check YouTube first. Praise the Most High. Let me see about Facebook. Should be good on there if we're good on YouTube. Where are we at? Let's see. Where are we at? Are we live? Shalom Israel, grace and mercy. We appear to be. Praise the Most High for that. All right, so my phone should already be on silent. I'll put that down over here. So yeah, Lord's will. I'm going to cover the same thing that I did a few weeks ago that had to be deleted because the audio was just terrible. Lord's will, y'all will get some understanding on this lesson because it's as I was saying in the comments with Sister Elizabeth. Shout out to my godmother Elizabeth. She's always present, at least and in the comments and in the likes and stuff, and in spirit, right? So, but no, she said she tried to watch it, and the audio just was terrible, right? It started cutting out. And yeah, my apologies. I've already said that in the comment, but I'll say that again on stream. But no, I told her in a response that it's kind of an evergreen lesson. It's always relevant because it's about self-love. All right, and the love of God, which has got to come first. Before you can have true self-love, you got to love God, and you can't love anyone else without first self-love. And I'll get into that later on in the lesson. But this present world teaches us to hate ourselves. So I'll just get into that when we get into the lesson itself. I've been seeing elsewhere in the news, just like escalation in the war with Iran. I covered that last week, but it is only further escalating. I've seen, the state of Israel and America bombing the oil refineries over there. Things look real rough. Only further escalation in that. And it's probably only going to escalate further and further. I've seen, rumors and reports that, Iran could strike California. But Iran's missile technology will not reach that far. They don't have the military capabilities. They don't have the technology to shoot missiles pretty much anywhere except for there in the east. They don't have missiles that will reach all the way to the other side of the world. All right, they're not like America, who can do that. I think the range for their longest range missiles are 4,000 kilometers, something like that. They could reach Africa and parts of Europe. And if they really wanted to, they could probably reach parts of China, but they're allies, so they're not going to do that. They from what I understand when it comes to Iran, that they're not really trying to target American soil necessarily. They're trying to target American businesses, right? That's why they targeted Dubai. That's why they targeted Bahrain and UAE, because there's a lot of American business that goes on there. Right, so that's really what they wanted to happen because they know that's what will hurt Americans the most when it comes to the leaders of America. They don't care about the American citizens, so that's why Iran's not really going to target American citizens. They care more about the dollar. They care more about their business, right? So that's why Iran targeted the businesses over there. All right, they're not stupid over there. They're intelligent. All right, they're not stupid or unstrategic in anything that they do, but I've been seeing these reports about California. So there could be an event that happens in California, not through Iran's military technology, but through terror cells, right? Through terrorist groups, whether it be Al-Qaeda or the Taliban or whatever, ISIS, whoever they got connections to. there could be something like that happening in California, similar to a 9/11, which really was used by the government to establish, or rather to stir up the minds of the people to go to war in Iraq, right? They used 9/11 to do that. So there may be a similar type event going on in California. And the Department of Homeland Security had put out sometime last year to be on the lookout for like things that could happen at sporting events, right? So they don't put that stuff out for no reason. So y'all keep an eye out for that. There could be something like that happen soon. Maybe it won't, but just be wary. There might be something like that they blame on Iran, and convince the people to go to a war with Iran with ground troops. So y'all be aware of that. Also, one thing I want to point out: the Passover is coming up next week. I'm going to put out a pre-recorded video Sunday, Lord's will, because the Passover is Monday night, and that video that I put out on Sunday on the YouTube. So y'all check that out. Lord's will, that will cover every single question that you may have concerning the Passover, all right, and what we're supposed to do, how we celebrate it, all that kind of stuff. So Lord's will, I can get that out to y'all. I already have like past content on the Passover, so if y'all want to check that out, feel free. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started. We have this article here talking about Clavicular. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of this guy. And I'm not going to read all this article because I remember last time I tried to read all of it, and it's too much. Not only in content, but also like the phrasing and the words they use. It's too much. No, it's too many paragraphs for what I want to use it for, but it's too much. All right, but anyway. So this is Clavicular. It said, inside Clavicular's thirsty tour of New York City. All right. It says upbeat music. I want to stop this. I don't want to see this video. All right. So it said, rolling with the Lord of Online looksmaxing, quote unquote looksmaxing, as he meets the press, hits the runway, and tangles with his haters during a chaotic weekend in Manhattan. All right. So this is posted February 19th, 2026. All right. Braden Peters was a normal kid once. For the most part, his childhood was probably the same as anyone else. He tells me there's not a lot of deviation between 5-year-olds. He grew up in Hoboken, New Jersey, with a businessman father and a mother who used to be a bodybuilder. He had a little sister. There was a dog. His family would often go skiing, and every summer they'd visit Cape Cod in Massachusetts and hang around the beach. But Peters was a hyper fixator. When he got hooked on something, he committed. He liked Nerf guns, so he bought tons of them. He was briefly into He was briefly very into politics. His family had a home gym, and he started working out. Soon he was watching Rich Piana videos on YouTube, digging into more plates, more dates, and bodybuilding forums, and looking up posts about shoulder blades and shoulder-to-waist ratios. Then he found looksmax.org, the website that would change his life. In the last few months, Braden Peters has stopped being Braden Peters. He has evolved into a supernatural creature known only by his online handle, Clavicular. Named after the clavicle, also known as the collarbone, Clavicular has become the face of the looksmaxing community, a cohort of painfully online young men who obsess over physical self-improvement in the hope that it'll improve their dating odds, right? So looksmaxing is investing everything into how you look so that you can attract women, all right? That's generally the sentiment. Clavicular took it further than anyone else. He claims to have smashed his face with a hammer to make bones regrow sharper, smoked meth to curb his appetite, and performed dick-ups by placing weights on his penis to maximize girth and erection strength. At age 14, he said he began injecting testosterone he'd ordered from the internet. With no parental or medical oversight, now his body can't naturally produce it. He believes he's currently infertile. Right, so much for them dick-ups, right? Because he's infertile, all right? Because he started injecting himself with testosterone, injecting himself with hormones at a very young age. Now he believes he's infertile. He has also mastered clip farming, the strategy of doing such unhinged things on live stream that they get clipped and go viral on social media. In his Truman Show-esque daily streams, he gleefully says slurs and brutally eviscerates women's looks. Just before Christmas, he appeared to hit a guy with a Cybertruck while streaming and driving, and said on camera that he hoped the guy had been killed. No charges were filed, In January, he popped out to a Miami club with the Avengers of Far-Right Dorks and danced to Ye's Heil Hitler, right? So that was the first time I had ever heard of this guy. I found out he was hanging out with Sneeko and Andrew Tate and Nick Fuentes, and they were, dancing and singing to, the Ye song, Heil Hitler, all right? Over the last few months, he's been called everything from the greatest performance artist alive to a mentally ill meth addict and compared to a picaresque novel protagonist who bounces from one thing to another without suffering any real consequences or learning anything from the experience. He's gone from New Jersey nobody to Miami frat boy to suddenly the toast of the reactionary downtown scene. Last week was his peak, his Manhattan debut, which included a surprisingly credulous New York Times profile, a glamorous runway walk, and multiple fashion after parties. We were backstage as all the chaos unfolded. Right up until the day it happened, Clavicular's fashion debut was in doubt. He was set to walk in a show by Elena Velez, the Midwest designer known for dressing online it girls and controversial characters from the downtown Dime Square scene. But then Clavicular got arrested while live streaming at a bar in Scottsdale, Arizona, and police found a fake ID along with an Adderall pill and a steroid. Then, just the day before the fashion show, Arizona prosecutors dropped his case due to no reasonable likelihood of conviction. Per the Maricopa County attorney's office, he immediately flew to New York. I was going to say fled, but he got arrested and then immediately flew to New York. When I find Clavicular at the fashion show hours before it kicks off, he's huddled on a dark leather couch next to a woman with bleached eyebrows who's injecting him with cell-repairing peptide NAD+. This is being live streamed to over 10,000 people on Kick, the less moderated rival to Twitch. Clavicular's right-hand man, Brock, stands a few feet away with a large camera, while his fellow chiseled looksmaxer, Drago, real name Yoritz Eguilier? Y'all forgive me, I don't know that name. Sits nearby, along with their solemn security guard, a man named Joe, who hails from Jamaica, Queens. The woman is educating Clavicular about the voodoo magic of vabbing, or vaginal dabbing, or applying pussy juice to one's pulse points to lure in men. The girls have to make sure they have a pretty primo C word. I'm not gonna say anything because this article does get very vulgar, so I'm not gonna say any of the too bad words. Anyway, C word, to be getting away with that, Clavicular says baffled, right? So all of this, or at least when it comes to like that one right there, just casually engaging in forms of witchcraft, all right? So there's that picture it was describing, all right? Clavicular streams the entire pre-show process for his fans, from fitting to hair and makeup to dress rehearsal. The show is vaguely themed around artificial intelligence, transhumanism, and surgical brutality. Models walk with bandages wrapped around their faces. One woman wears a corset with a metal frame that looks half melted by radioactive bile. Clavicular is a good muse for a show concerned with people's almost suicidal desire or impulse to be beautiful. Right? That's kind of his whole thing. Right? Is that he has to change himself cosmetically. He has to look smacks. He has to smash himself with a hammer, smash the bones in his face with a hammer so they grow back looking perfect. Right? Grow back looking sharp. All right. Let's see. Let's see. Clavicular is I just read that. But it feels like he's mostly been brought in as a gag, an opportunity for both Velez and Clavicular to produce what he describes as an infinite clip glitch and a 100-acre clip farm. His outfit is a crumpled white waxed cotton shirt, so it looks like he's soaking wet, which sends the chat into hysterics. Drenched in cum fit, soaked in dripping nut. Right, so this is the type of people who follow him, the type of people who are into this, the type of people of this generation who are just completely vulgar and ignorant. Clavicular spends most of the pre-show making fun of the whole thing, cracking jokes about the models. Am I the only dude born a dude here? And freaking out when he finds out he's supposed to wear a wig. I effing hate this S, he says after they slick back his hair. It's trash. He gets agitated when a Spanish influencer starts speaking Spanish in front of him. I don't like when people talk in Spanish because it's like, I don't know what the F's going on under the abrasive exterior, though he's clearly geeked to be here. While some reactionaries see high fashion and runway shows as sissy-esque, it's catnip for looks maxers who yearn to attain airbrushed perfection. They worship male models like Jordan Barrett and Sean O'Pry, whose runway walks represent the pinnacle of guys overcoming the fallibility of the flesh. Clavicular's phone lock screen is a picture of David Gandy, widely considered the highest grossing male model in history. I'm just here for the edits on TikTok, he says. So, it mentioned earlier that like looks maxing was like, or at least started as like guys wanting to look the best so that they could attract women, but really we see there's a homoerotic component to it as well, right? Because going this far with it and like worshiping male models, like that's pretty gay, all right? It said looks maxing descends from 2000's pickup artist forums and 2010's incel culture. For those unaware, incel means involuntarily celibate, right? As in like can't get women, all right? In essence, it's an ecosystem of influencers, forums, video editors, and clip farmers. At the extreme end, adherents lengthen their legs by breaking their bones, undergo bimaxillary osteotomies, double jaw surgery, and imbibe peptides that pledge to augment your brain power and suppress your appetite. Right? So they're doing all this, smashing their bones and getting all these plastic surgeries and, taking all these pills and all this kind of stuff just to look better, just to look more aesthetically pleasing. In 2023, I wrote a story about my experience soft maxing, the light version of looks maxing, and was forced to label bone smashing a fake trend because we couldn't find evidence that people were actually hammering their faces to induce micro tears in the bones, which would then purportedly regrow in more defined and masculine way. In a more defined and masculine way. Years later, along came Clavicular, the bone smasher who puts into practice techniques that seemed like internet rumors or figments of the looks maxing community's imagination. Once he found the scene's premier website, looksmax.org, he couldn't get off it. He said right there. So people thought, oh, there's no way anybody would smash the bones in their face. That's ridiculous. Just so they would regrow looking better. But this guy actually did it. All right? Apparently. He posted so frequently that he became one of the most popular members. And even a moderator, more like an M moderator. He's spoken about becoming the lab rat of the community. The guy willing to risk everything to ascend or glow up. See, this is, even the person writing this article it's real disgusting to me personally. Just because ascend, and then they put in parentheticals glow up, but that's both slang. So like I don't know why you would try to explain the slang with more slang. He's used the risky anabolic steroid Trenbolone, which is not approved for humans, just animals, and claims to have smoked meth to burn off flab. Did it feel good? Of course. It's effing meth. His purported pill intake includes everything from beta blockers for anxiety reduction to minoxidil, hair growth, to melatonin 2, which is sunless tanning, to retatrutine, appetite suppression. All right, so taking all these pills just so he can look good, according to, him and, modern society, right? Whatever's aesthetically pleasing. Taking all these pills, smashing the bones in his face, getting injections, right? Doing all this stuff, right? Because he was not comfortable the way that he looked previously, right? He's quote unquote looks maxing. After just 3 weeks at Sacred Heart University, the school kicked him out when LooksMax users tipped him off about his habits and steroids were found in his room. And there he goes with his wax shirt he got on there. At one point, he recommended his audience try to reduce anxiety with baclofen, a muscle relaxer. In December 2024, while driving home from his job at a restaurant in Massachusetts, he crashed his car. On the LooksMax forum, Clavicular wrote that it was because he'd fallen asleep off the baclofen or baclofen. I don't know. I've never heard of that drug before this article. No comment, his publicist says when I bring this up. Oh yeah, it's silly, Clavicular adds. How about we comment on the car crash where the driver effed up my Sprinter? Bro, this effing R word, I'm not even going to use that word because people get offended when you use that word, drives it under a bridge that says 7-foot clearance, and it's an effing sprinter. Despite everything, Clavicular is still alive. More than that, he succeeded. He's conventionally attractive, with a prominent jawline and a symmetrical face, although it's hard to say how much of that springs from the bone smashing and testosterone and how much is just him growing up and slimming down, right? Because there's a good chance he would have looked very similar naturally, right? Yet he did all this, all the different pills he's taken, the drugs he's taken, the steroids he's taken, the bone smashing, all of this, just so he can, look more conventionally attractive, all right? Lately, he seems to have broken containment, evolving rapidly from purely online looks maxing guy into something like a mainstream personality. The uninitiated seem to find him both amusing and terrifying. His first spotlight moment came in December when he told the Daily Wire's Michael Knowles that even though his personal politics hewed closer to J.D. Vance's, he would vote for Gavin Newsom in 2028 because Newsom is hotter and Vance is obese. Right? With Vance, he's not obese. Right, but whatever. I guess he's just seen like the memes. He's since been covered by outlets like the New York Times and the Atlantic as a new type of guy to whom concerned attention must be paid. A harbinger of a future generation of post-canceled nihilists who would vote for a liberal if he looks like Superman. Right. So, but yeah, even with because again, going back to the origins of looks maxing was to look good for women, but then that kind of evolved into like this homoerotic thing. You still like you see that with what he's saying. He's saying, well, Newsom's hot and Vance is not, right? That's that's definitely homoerotic. But to anyone in the know, Clavicular was pretty clearly just saying S. He was put on the spot and came up with a provocative answer that slots into his impossible worldview, namely that good looks are everything to the point that they can determine the course of history. He isn't going to vote for Newsom. He probably isn't going to vote at all because he thinks politics is a waste of time. Nonetheless, the far right has eagerly claimed him as their own, right? So, he's got a point with the politics in the U.S., certainly a waste of time. But it says the far right eagerly claimed him as their own, right? We'll get into that a little later on about the far right. While his claim looks maxing isn't racist, his proclivity for slurs and casual misogyny, like saying women shouldn't have the right to vote, makes it obvious why figures like Nick Fuentes have embraced him, right? So he's just trying to be edgy, right? That's pretty much his whole personality is trying to look good and be edgy to gain followers, right? It probably doesn't go too much deeper than that, honestly, because it's easy to be like, oh, he's hateful, he's racist. He probably doesn't think much at all, just point blank period. And see, this is where, to me at least, it starts getting into like words and like modern slang, modern vernacular that I just cannot stand. And I don't necessarily want to read all this, but y'all get the point. Y'all get the point that there's this guy who has basically made a living off of this looks maxing thing that basically stems from people's self-hatred. All right, that's what this is. That's this guy. He's not the problem. He's a symptom of the problem, which is self-hatred. All right, and that's what this society has taught us. It has taught us self-hatred. All right. Yeah, see, look how long this is. There's no way I'm reading all this. All right. But anyway, I'll read this last little bit here. Well, that's not even the last bit. But I want to read this little section. It says, I lob a handful of questions at Clavicular. His answers are clipped, but not intentionally cold. He seems to need certain types of questions to pry him open. He tells me that it was nice seeing his parents this week, that it was the first time he's been home in ages. They're an unseen presence in Clavicular streams, appearing sporadically in the form of texts and phone calls to chastise him from doing drugs or looking the fool, right? Because his parents don't want him to do all this, but they also kind of enable him to do all this. While they attempted to take away his testosterone and hammers as a teen, they've adjusted to his lifestyle now, he says. They're happy for the most part, and they get it, but they still get pissed, like when I get sent off to jail or if there's headlines I was calling my dad at 3 a.m. or whatever from jail. No parent's going to be happy to hear that. And yeah, nor should they be. This week, a little discourse bomb exploded among esoteric New Gen conservatives who are arguing over whether Clavicular, Velez, or, the Remilia Corp have received funding from Peter Thiel, the right-wing billionaire with ties to downtown New York scene. Vance is funded by Thiel, right? So Thiel's he's not just in the New York scene, he's in the White House too. I asked Clavicular if he's funded by Thiel. No, he states, the internet users were saying that because I got my charges dropped. They were like, there's no way. There has to be some shadow organization funding him. The boring truth is that he's funded not by Thiel or the Illuminati, but in a roundabout way by gamblers. He said he gets $133,000 a month from Kick, which is backed by the online casino stake. I asked for his favorite album ever. That's a good question, man. He says, I just like individual songs. I think that albums are a S concept because now I like to have every song on the album. Because now I have to like every song on the album. It's R-worded, right? I asked him for his mile time. Running is so ridiculous to me because I can never think of a scenario where I would be required to run. That doesn't seem like something we've had to do since prehistoric times. Running, ridiculous. You can't even fathom that. See that is just so ignorant of anything really, of anything outside of his own personal experience. He's never had to run, so he's like, why would I ever have to run? What if somebody chased you with a gun? A gun shoots projectiles. You're not outrunning a bullet, right? So I guess if somebody pointed a gun at him, he would just stand there and piss himself. What about a knife then? Huh? A knife? Well, yeah, but I don't know. I wouldn't bring a knife to a gunfight, and it's just stupidity. But anyway, let's see. I just kind of just want to get to the end here. Let's see. Yeah, so I'll just read this last little paragraph and we'll go on to the next thing. In his mission to transcend jesterhood, which would be like, just a joke, just a comedy act, Clavicular has made himself into the ultimate fool, a toy for the world to play with. But the last laugh always goes to the jester, even if he's laughing to himself in the algorithmic insane asylum. The runway debut, the after parties, the fight, the scorn, and the selfies. Oh yeah, he showed up to a prominent fight as well. He seemed very pleased with how this trip went. The clip firestorm it generated, the way Clavicular celebrity works, everything helps his unkillable viral machine. The only way for him to lose is if he loses the world's attention. This GQ piece is just another notch on the bedpost. All right, so yeah, it's really, honestly, I feel sorry for this guy because the self-hatred has took him to such extremes, and now he's living it up, so to speak, and he doesn't understand like long-term consequences of the stuff he's doing now. Which, I mean, he said he thinks he's infertile. He might not care about that now, but like once he gets into his like late 20s and like 30s, 40s, who knows? Lord only knows what all this is doing to his body, right? So again, he is just a symptom of the larger issue of self-hatred that's going on here in America, right? And it's not just America, but America is the global empire and it influences the global culture. I don't know if y'all have realized that. There's another thing that happened a couple weeks ago. It says the trans shooter who killed his ex-wife and son but spared his daughter. All right, so what Times is this? This is the Times? Oh yeah, I guess it's just the Times. All right. Robert Dorgan, a former Marine and shipyard worker, described himself as to the right of Hitler. All right, so he's a far-right trans person. All right. And was embarrassed by his gender transition before opening fire in Pawtucket. So this is Rhode Island. This happened in Rhode Island, again, a few weeks ago. All right, so let's get into it. After shooting his ex-wife, her parents, and his son at a hockey match in the small Rhode Island town of Pawtucket, Robert Dorgan fixed gaze on his daughter for a reason that remains unclear as investigators try to unpick one of the most horrific acts of violence to hit this sleepy corner of New England. Dorgan decided to spare her before turning the gun on himself. It feels very odd to say this, but I felt like I saw him communicating deep sadness. Amanda Wallace Hubbard said of her estranged father, I know that's probably not what people want to hear. I get it. But there's some deep, deep sadness in his eyes, right? So some self-hatred. There's definitely self-hatred with anybody who transitions. With any and everybody who transitions, there's a self-hatred. It's literally called, sometimes called gender dysphoria, sometimes called body dysmorphia, all right? And those terms get flipped around and used often to describe this mental disorder that trans people have, all right? And just to get this out of the way, as I just described, it's a mental disorder, right? When people have mental disorders, like for example schizophrenia, and they tell you about the issues that they're having, you don't engage with the issues they're having, right? They won't tell you, the schizophrenic person won't be like, hey, I'm hearing voices. You don't tell them, hey, you should listen to those voices, right? That would be ridiculous, right? You tell them, hey, remain in reality. You're right here with me. Talk with me. Don't pay any mind to the voices, right? And then usually people give them medication to suppress the voices, which, that's another topic for another day. But you don't engage with their illness, right? You try to give them the things that they need to overcome that illness, right? But when it comes to trans people, they say, oh, I feel like I'm in the wrong body. And people say, well, you should change your body then. That's ridiculous. You should tell them to love themselves, right? Love themselves the way that they are, the way that God made them, right? Don't try to change your body. That's not the problem. The body is not the problem here. The problem is the way you see yourself, right? The problem is that you don't love yourself in your body, right? So again, it's self-hatred that is being enabled by this current society that we live in. Anyway, Rhonda Dorgan, age 52, and her son, Aiden Dorgan, 23, had been watching the family's youngest child play in a high school ice hockey game when Dorgan opened fire. They were killed instantly. Rhonda's parents, Linda and Gerald Dorgan, and Tom Garuso, a family friend, were critically wounded and remain in the hospital. I don't know of any follow-up since then. I don't think this article has been updated since February the 20th. All right. Dorgan had in recent years undergone male-to-female gender reassignment, making the Paul Tuckett incident the fourth high-profile shooting by a transgender suspect in North America within a few years. Earlier this month, Jesse Van Roetselaar, 18, a Canadian who identified as trans, murdered his mother and stepbrother before shooting dead 6 others at his former school in Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia. And that's Jesse there. Dorgan's spree has shaken Paul Tuckett and the country as people ask what could have led a once loving father to attempt to kill his family. Dorgan, age 56, had a troubled history. He served briefly in the Marine Corps, enlisting in the spring of '88. Less than 3 months later, he was separated from the service with the lowest military rank. Major Jacoby Getty of the Marine Corps said such a rapid discharge indicated the character of his service was incongruent with Marine Corps' expectations and standards. Right, so they said, look, we didn't want him in the Marine Corps, so he couldn't go any further. He was discharged. All right. Dorgan worked as a lorry driver, then became an electrician at General Dynamics Bath Iron Works, a shipyard in Bath, Maine that designs and builds ships for the U.S. Navy. Right, so lorry driver would be like a truck driver. He had 6 children, he had 6 children with 3 women, including Rhonda, with whom he had a daughter and 2 sons. Rhonda and Robert married in '92 but divorced in 2020. Court documents show Rhonda filed for separation, writing gender reassignment surgery and narcissistic personality disorder as grounds for the divorce, but those were crossed out and replaced with irreconcilable differences, right? Because more than likely, because putting the fault on someone will extend that process and take it to court, and they'll have to battle one another. If you just write irreconcilable differences, then y'all can pretty much just split up and decide what you want to take, and that'll be that, right? So went from saying it was his fault because she didn't agree with the gender reassignment surgery, and then changing that to say, well, no fault. All right, it'd be simpler to just say no fault, irreconcilable differences. At about this time, Dorgan had undergone gender reassignment surgery. Dorgan appeared to continue living with Rhonda and her parents for a short period. Dorgan alleged Rhonda's father told him to leave because there is no way a tranny is going to stay in my house, the police report said. All right, and as we see that, we'll see that later on when we start going through the tweets of this person, of Robert Dorgan. We will see that this self-hatred and exclusion is pretty much what led to these violent outbursts. All right. Using census data, the Times established that Dorgan had the same surname as his in-laws because he and his ex-wife were first cousins once removed, sharing a great-grandparent. Dorgan appeared to struggle with his trans identity. He asked friends and family to call him Roberta Esposito, though he did not appear to have legally changed his name. Destiny McKenzie, a shipyard colleague, said Dorgan wanted to be called Roberta at work. He would use the women's bathroom and wore high heels. All right, so I'm assuming he wore high heels outside of work. It'd be pretty weird to wear heels to work. Another colleague said Dorgan appeared to be split on the issue of transgender acceptance, being proud of his transition one moment and embarrassed the next. Again, signs of self-hatred, right? Trying to put on this facade of oh, I'm a woman now, but then really internally, having second thoughts. Social media posts associated with the name Roberta Esposito show him with varnished nails and dyed hair. The shootings in Rhode Island and Tumbler Ridge follow an attack in Minneapolis in August by Robin Westman, a 23-year-old man who appeared at some point to identify as female. Westman shot dead 2 children and injured 21 at a Catholic church and school. Some Republican commentators have suggested a pattern of violence was emerging. The Minneapolis attack prompted the Trump administration to propose banning transgender people from owning guns, deeming gender dysmorphia a disqualifying condition. All right. There's another picture of Dorgan. About 2.8 million Americans identify as transgender, equating to 0.8% of the population. About 0.1%, 1 in 1,000, of mass shootings between 2013 and 2025 were carried out by a person confirmed to be transgender, according to data gathered by website factcheck.org. Right. So, according to the data, trans people are like less likely than anyone else. Well, I'm not going to say than anyone else, than the average American to commit gun crimes. There's just a lot of like gun violence in America because America's so big and there's a lot of guns here. All right. So naturally, trans people are going to slide into that at some point. All right. But my point that I'm making here is not necessarily of, trans people are more likely to commit violence. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just pointing to this story as, hey, this trans situation is of self-hatred. And this specific trans situation is of a white supremacist / Nazi trans person. All right. Dorgan's online account suggested a man with mental health issues who had a deep hatred for those who differed from him. You see it right there. So it said a bicep tattoo resembled the skull logo of the 3rd SS Panzer Division, Totenkopf, the Death Heads Division of Nazi Germany under the SS Ruins. Excuse me. So here you have the tattoo, the Totenkopf tattoo, the SS. That's a Nazi thing. All right. So you had Dorgan was a trans Nazi. All right. On X, Dorgan described his politics as to the right of Hitler. Right. So obviously very, very Nazi-like. In other posts, he made repeated references to white power and white pride worldwide. Right. So you have this self-hatred leading to racism. All right. Or this racism leading to self-hatred, however you want to describe it. I would say it's actually the latter more than the former. This white supremacist ideology that has been very present in America for centuries is leading to the self-hatred. All right. And really it all stems from the lack of the love of God. And we'll get into that a little later. Reports suggest Dorgan had a volatile temper. He was charged with simple assault and battery in '89. The case was dismissed. So I wouldn't use an assault charge from '89 to try to make any point about something that happened in the modern day. That was so long ago that people change over time. It's possible that people change over time. So if it was a repeated pattern of behavior since '89, that'd be different. But Just using one incident in 89, that's not really evidence of anything. Others who knew Dorgan disputed reports of aggressive tendencies. Sarah Graves, a colleague, said that as a young woman in a male-dominated field, Dorgan had always made me feel safe. Right, so it depends on the person, right? Who you're talking to, whether or not this guy was a violent guy or not. Graves told the Boston Globe that Dorgan's children were all she ever talked about, driving from Maine to Rhode Island at weekends, sometimes sleeping in the car so she could be there for her kids, right? So obviously Dorgan cared a lot about his family, right? And then we're going to read on down that some of the tweets. Oh, yeah, here it goes right here. Graves said Dorgan complained he was not fully accepted by his family. I'm not sure what the exchange of words could have been to push her over the edge, Graves said. She worshipped the ground her ex-wife and her children walked on. The night before the attack, Dorgan appears to have posted on X, angry that someone had called Sarah McBride a trans Democratic representative. A man, keep bashing us, but do not wonder why we go berserk, Dorgan wrote. So that's the night before the attack. All right, so you have Dorgan having all of these feelings of self-hatred, not really accepting himself, all right? Then also his family is telling him that they're not going to accept him the way that he is, right? And so, and then he goes online and he sees all these different posts of people not accepting trans people, and that really sends him over the edge, right? The self-hatred leading to the hatred of others, leading to the violent outburst. Tina Goncalves, Paul Tuckett's chief of police, said the gunman entered the hockey arena, left, then returned. From the video, it doesn't appear that there was any conversation or confrontation between the family before the incident happened, she said. There had been no indication from family or friends that there was any violence underway or that they were in fear of this individual. We continue to look into what the motivation was. We're not sure at this point. We don't know what the triggering event was, right? So it seems just by how the video footage is described is that maybe Dorgan had been considering this for some time. Then they walked into this hockey event. Maybe one of the family members made a slight comment, right? Maybe a joke, maybe something about here she comes again or whatever, or like you're really wearing that here, just like anything that could be viewed or even misconstrued by Dorgan as being not accepting. So then that it didn't lead to an argument or anything like that. Just made Dorgan be like, okay, all right, I'll be right back. Just a straw that would break the camel's back, right? That's what it seems like to me, at least, and I'm from the outside looking in, obviously. Star Soroka, Aiden Dorgan's fiance, was in the audience at the rink when the attack happened. She speculated that Dorgan's sense of alienation left him embittered towards the family. He just had severe mental illness, and he just didn't want to see his family move on away from him and be happy, Soroka said. He wanted them to fall down the same spiral that he fell down. He just had very bad mental illnesses, and he didn't want to get help. All right, so clearly something wrong with him mentally, but the self-hatred. And you may think that this guy's a trans and a Nazi. Aren't those two conflicting ideologies? Not exactly. All right. So when you look a little deeper into it about the Nazis, I got here this book called Germany's National Vice by Samuel Igra. All right. Published out of London. And as it says here, it was first published in 1945. So I had found this book based on, I want to give a shout out to a truth writer, aka Shattered Paradise, right? It's the same people run two different accounts, and I don't know which account it was on where they had posted this video talking about the Pink Swastika, which is a book that come out more recently, 80s or 90s or something like that. And if you try to look it up, you'll find it, but like Wikipedia will discredit it and say the people who wrote the book just had an anti-gay agenda, and they may have. I'm not sure. I haven't read it, but rather that video showed excerpts. Again, shout out to Shattered Paradise and Truth Writer, and they actually showed photos of here's the Nazis hanging out with a man dressed as a woman, right? And there's several photos. It's not like an individual case. It's like the Nazis either while they were taking a break, from like the war or the camp, whatever. Maybe they were holding parties in the camp where men dressed up. Regardless, the Nazis, like, there's certainly photographic evidence of them doing homosexual acts and cross-dressing. All right. But anyway, this book. So I was looking a little further into it, like the pink swastika, and it said it was actually a lot of the information derived from this book, Germany's National Vice by Samuel Egra. Right. So I just want to point something out real quick. When you look in the table of contents here, and it starts from like the history of Germany in general and the land there, right? As far as before you even get to the Nazis at all. All right. So, we talk about the moral perverts in Potsdam, and it talks about like even going back to knights in the Middle Ages and things like that. But anyway, I do want to skip down to excuse me. What is it here? I think page 66. Maybe it's before that. But down to like Hitler and what he was doing. All right. So let's get down. This is just usarchive.org. Like it's in the it's free online. This PDF is. All right. So I think it's here. Here on page, this is chapter 6 on page 66 of the book. All right. So there's something there, but I just want to point this out. Pederasts and murderers. A few days after the murder of Dr. Dollfuss in Vienna, which was July 25th, 1934, the semi-official Italian newspaper, Il Popolo di Roma, published the comment, "Pederasts and assassins rule in Berlin," right? If you know anything about what a pederast is, it's, a man who likes little boys. That's what a pederast is. By intimating, and actually, the ancient Greeks were pederasts. That's where the idea of that, the culture of that came from, was from ancient Greece. That's what the Greeks did. All right, so we'll continue. By intimating that the authors of the Vienna crime were directly associated with the pederasts and assassins who ruled in Berlin, Mussolini's paper made a grave accusation against the German government at a time when friendly relations existed between the two countries. Under ordinary circumstances, the publication of such a statement would have given rise to a diplomatic protest and demanded an explanation. Yet, as far as is known, Hitler made no such protest. Moreover, Mussolini backed up his accusation by ordering the mobilization of Italian troops on the Austro-Italian frontier as a gesture against Hitler's designs on Austria. But Hitler made no counter move, right? So if somebody calls you, a pederast and a murderer, if you're not that, you're immediately going to say, what are you talking about? Of course I ain't like that, right? You're going to make some kind of move against that, especially if you're the leader of a country. That's those fighting words, as some people would say, right? Hitler, he didn't do that. He didn't deny it at all. The explanation of Hitler's silence and inactivity in face of the Italian challenge may be, and probably is, that he was cowed by Mussolini's blackmail, right? Because Mussolini is calling him out on this, and Hitler, he can't say or do anything about it because that's what he was and that's what he did. Mussolini knew that the murder of the Austrian chancellor had been ordered by Hitler and that this was not done from political motives exclusively. He knew that personal revenge against Dollfuss was the chief motive working in the dark recesses of Hitler's mind. For Dollfuss had come into possession of an authentic affidavit which connected Hitler directly with the moral scandals I have spoken of in the previous chapters of this book. In the light of the mass murders carried out by Hitler's orders on June 30th, 1934, it showed that the destinies of Germany and therewith the peace of Europe were at the mercy of a pathological criminal who was surrounded by a group of sexual perverts like himself, right? So that's how I did point out that, because I'll come back to this page here, but I did point out that this was originally published out of London in 1945, right? Come on, this thing's acting real slow. Y'all forgive me. There it is. All right. So I just want to point that out again. So this is Germany's National Vice by Samuel Egra. First published in 1945. I don't know if y'all can see that right there. I did bring this down, right? I never brought it down. Dang. Y'all forgive me. All right. First published in 1945. Y'all can see that. All right. So, dang, I'm not. Yeah, at least y'all got the audio. Lord's will, y'all got the audio. But Germany's National Advice by Samuel Egra. So, in a way, this is propaganda, similar to how America was kind of stirring up the Americans at the time to come against the Nazis, right? And like they would publish films and whatnot. Not at this time, but later on when America entered the war. I guess in 1945 that would have already been a part of the war and whatnot. But in a way, this is propaganda, but that doesn't mean it's untrue. All right. So Samuel Egra is yes, he's trying to stir up the people against Germany, but that doesn't necessarily mean the information is incorrect. All right. So I do just want to point that out, and that could be misconstrued in a particular way, but let's keep going. Down here on we were still up here on an earlier page. All right. So there we go. So basically the idea that, there was a lot of, amongst the National Socialist Party in Germany in the 30s, there was a lot of, as I said, sexual perverts, Hitler being one of them. Under these circumstances, the Austrian Chancellor felt it his duty to bring the information he had received to the knowledge of other European governments and the Vatican. Accordingly, he had certified copies of the affidavit made and entrusted to the diplomatic representatives of these governments in Vienna. That is the account which has been given me, and I have every reason to believe it to be at least substantially true. Among others, Dr. Hermann Rausching assured me that he had seen a copy of such a document, which was in the hands of a foreign government. It declared that Hitler had been a male prostitute in Vienna in the time of his sojourn there, from 1907 to 1912. And that he practiced the same calling in Munich from 1912 to 1914. All right. So that Hitler was going around, having sex as a young man, having sex with all these older men. All right. Mussolini obviously knew of the existence of this document and had a copy of it at his disposal when he charged Hitler with pederasty and murder at one and the same time. All right. So, I just wanted to point that out, and I'll jump down to what, the end of this book. Just kind of the summary. When he starts summarizing, I think it's right up here when he says the root of the evil. Here we go. So this chapter 8, the root of the evil. Professor Hans Bleuer, who has been accepted by the Nazis as the apostle of a new social order, declares that woman is man's deadly enemy. You see that right there? So that's the mentality. And that was the same thing as the ancient Greeks mentality. That, they would get married to procreate and things like that. But what they really liked doing was, the sexual perversion that I described, pederasty. All right. This anti-feminist attitude, again, this was written in 1945. So feminism in this sense that he's talking about, or at least, being anti-feminist, he's not talking about the movement of feminism. He's referring to anti-women. All right, attitude is widespread in Germany and has been an unbroken tradition among the German militarist caste ever since those segregated male communities, the Teutonic Knights, founded the Prussian state. It was the attitude of Frederick William, the creator of the Prussian army and the father of Frederick the Great. If he, Frederick William, met a lady on the street, says Macaulay in his essay on Frederick the Great, he gave her a kick and ordered her to go home and mind her brats. Right, so just the hatred of women. All right, and that's the thing about the Nazis. I mean, they hate everybody. Right, so this idea of this white supremacist mentality, like I said, has been in America for centuries as well. That hatred doesn't just stay local. That turns into a hatred of everybody. And obviously, if you hate people, then you hate God, right? Because God made us. All right. Let's see. Frederick the Great persistently refused to cohabit with his bride even from the day of their marriage. Hitler has taken Frederick as his model, though he has not gone through the farce of marriage as Frederick did, right? So Samuel Egra makes the case that the reason why Hitler never married is because he was homosexual, all right? He was a pederast. All association, I do just want to say, not all homosexuals are pederasts, but he's making that case that Hitler was. All association with women, other than merely for the physical purpose of procreation, involves deterioration of many soldier-like virtues and therefore must be avoided by at least the master class within the master race. Right? So that was the idea of the Nazis. That is the teaching of Bleuer and his school. It has been systematically inculcated by the Nazi press, especially Himmler's official organ, Das Schwarze Korps, and has been adopted in practice as the basis of German social organization. The Nazi elite are being brought up in the segregated male communities called Ordensburgen. These are to replace the family as the groundwork on which the state is to rest. If there were only the family as the basis of the human social system, says Bleuer, Roll der Erotic, is volume 2, page 91. Nothing more would be achieved beyond the maintenance of the species. They said, look, we can't get anything done if we're too focused on getting with women, right? We got to be among men. Let's just be among men. The founding of the state begins with the introduction of a second pole, and that pole is the male community. The Jews, he remarks, are not state builders because they suffer from male companionship impotency. What does that say? Mannerbundschwasch, something like that. And the same time from a morbid enlargement of the family idea. What is that? Family's hypertrophy. All right. So he said, the Jews are more concerned with the family, right? And that's because the Torah and the Bible are concerned with the family. All right. So they said, look, we can't be like that because that's what the Jews are like. It is in this crude anti-feminist attitude, recently developed according to the usual German fashion into a theory of life, that we are to seek the primary cause of that brutal type of sex perversion for which the Germans are noted. And this, in turn, is the psychological source of those sadistic outbreaks which show themselves in the torture of weaker groups within the national community and the civilian members of the foreign populations that have been made the victims of military aggression. All right. So, I just wanted to point that out that, you may think that trans and Nazi aren't those two conflicting ideologies. No, it's all the ideology of hatred. It's the idolatry, certainly. That's what it stems back from. But it is the ideology of self-hatred. It's the ideology of hatred in general. All right. And that starts with a hatred of God. All right. So I got this here in Leviticus 19. Starting with 1, and we're going to jump down. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, and say unto them, Ye shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. Right? So that's what it starts with. It starts with being holy like God is holy. Right? That's how you love God, according to 1 John 5 and 3. There are many others that say you love God by keeping his commandments. Right? All right, so I'm going to jump down to verse 17. It says, Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thy heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor, and not suffer sin upon him. Thou shalt not avenge, nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord. Right? So if you love God, you are holy as he is holy. Right? You keep his commandments for your good. That's what Moses told us. Right? The commandments were for our good. God don't need to give us commandments. That's how God lives already. All right? But he give them for our good. So now you're holy as God is holy. The Most High said, don't hate your brother. Don't hate your people. Correct them. Show them the right way. Love your neighbor as yourself. Right? So it starts with a love of God. Then you have a love for yourself. That turns into a love of your people. Jumping down to verse 33. And if a stranger sojourn within your land, ye shall not vex him, meaning oppress or annoy him. But the stranger that dwelleth with you shall be unto you as one born among you, and thou shalt love him as thyself. For ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Right? So the love of God turns into the love of oneself, turns into the love of your people, turns into the love of the strangers, right? Turns into the love of everybody else. You will treat everyone with love and respect. Why? Because you love God first. All right? So let me go ahead and get this. And I'll get this here in Mark first. I'll get this here in Mark. You go to the New Testament because Christ talks about the same thing. He condenses it down, and he actually quotes Deuteronomy 6. I didn't go there, but same sentiment, same concept of loving God and doing what he says, being holy as he is holy. I believe this is Mark 12. I think it's Mark 12. Mark 12, and what do I want specifically? After they ask about the resurrection. Starting with 28. It says, and one of the scribes came, and having heard them reasoning together, and perceiving that he had answered them well, asked him, which is the first commandment of all, right? So, just to get the context, Sadducees were asking about the resurrection because the Sadducees were pretty secular. I think they believed in God, they just didn't believe in angels and spirits and things like that. And so, Christ is obviously against that because, the scriptures talk about angels, they talk about spirits. So how could you not believe in those things? Scripture talks about the resurrection. How could you not believe that? Right? So the Pharisees and the scribes, they weren't with the Sadducees, right? Because, they believed what the scripture says. The Sadducees didn't really believe what the scripture said. So the scribe sees that he shut down the Sadducees. And so he's, okay, let me ask a genuine question. And Jesus answered him, the first of all the commandments is, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment. So understand, first, we must love God. All right? So let's deal with the love of God, because I referenced it, but let's just go ahead and get it. In 1 John 5 and 3, just in case y'all are unaware, this is how you love God. All right? And again, there are many scriptures that reference this. This is, and even in the Ten Commandments, it references this. But 1 John 5 and 3, I like that one. I like how it's worded. So let's get that one real quick. Talking about the love of God, which Christ said was the first commandment. It was the most important one. It was the love of God. So in 1 John 5 and verse 3, it says, for this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous. You see that right there. This is how you love God, keeping his commandments, right? God says to, wear your fringes. Got the fringes on with the border of blue, as he said to do. The Lord said keep the Sabbath day holy. That's what we do. The Lord said keep the Passover. That's what we do, all right? And his commandments are not grievous. It's not a burden on us to do those things. I enjoy the Passover. I enjoy the Sabbath. I enjoy putting my fringes on, right? So those are just some simple examples, all right? That's the first commandment. It's to love God. And the second is like, meaning it's similar. The second is just alike. Namely this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. He said the second most important one is to love your neighbor like you love yourself. Naturally, you can't love your neighbor if you don't love yourself. All right? So first of all, you love God. That's going to teach you the love of yourself. I'm going to hold this here because this is how the love of God teaches you the love of yourself. In Wisdom of Solomon, Wisdom of Solomon 13. All right? Let's get this real quick so y'all can understand. I'm not talking about the love of yourself where, you love yourself and hate everybody else. That's not, first of all, that's not the love. That's not the love of God. That's not the love of yourself, not truly. But just understanding that God made you, all right? That you were his creation, and he knows what he's doing. And he made you the way that he wanted to make you, all right? Wisdom of Solomon 13, starting with 1. Surely vain are all men by nature who are ignorant of God, and could not, out of the good things that are seen, know him that is. Neither by considering the works did they acknowledge the work master. Right? So this whole section of the Wisdom of Solomon is concerning idolatry. All right? But deemed either fire or wind or the swift air or the circle of the stars or the violent water or the lights of heaven to be the gods which govern the world. Right? So Solomon is saying they don't understand that all these creations have a creator. These themselves are not God. All right? With whose beauty, if they being delighted, took them to be gods, let them know how much better the Lord of them is, for the first author of beauty hath created them. So I just wanted to get the point that the Most High is the author of beauty. All right? He made you to be beautiful. All right? And the way he made you is beautiful. Right? So that means if you are melanated and got kinky or woolly hair, love your melanin and your woolly hair. If you are not as melanated, light skinned, right, or white, and got straight hair, love your lack of melanin and your straight hair, right? And everything in between. If you got a hook nose, love your hook nose. If you got a flat nose, love your flat nose. If you got a pointy nose, love your pointy nose. Like, if you got thin lips, love your thin lips. If you got thick lips, love your thick lips. Like, it's just loving yourself as God made you, knowing that he knew what he was doing when he made you. All right? Loving oneself, knowing that he's the author of beauty. All right? And the second is like, namely this: thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these. And the scribe said unto him, Well, master, thou hast said the truth. For there is one God, and there is none other but he. And to love him with all the heart, and with all the understanding, and with all the soul, and with all the strength, and to love his neighbor as himself is more than all whole burnt offerings and sacrifices, right? Because Christ could have said, well, you know, the sacrifice of the Passover, when they offered up all the lambs and the goats, you know, that's the most important one. That's not what he said. You know, that's the first commandment. No, he didn't say that. All right? He said to focus yourself on loving God and to focus yourself on loving one another as you love yourself. Those are the most important things. All right? And when Jesus saw that he answered discreetly, he said unto him, Thou art not far from the kingdom of God. And no man after that dares ask him any questions. So once you understand that the love of God and the love of one's neighbor as yourself are the most important things, you're not far from the kingdom. All right? But people don't know how to apply that. You apply that by reading his commandments and doing them. All right? But anyway, here in Wisdom of Solomon again. So I want to point out something, about the whole self-hatred and the trans thing. All right? Here in Wisdom of Solomon 14, I'll start with, 9. Because it all stems from, and even the Nazis got their ideas from the Americans when it comes to the white supremacist ideology. All right, these hateful people who came over here bringing their hateful ideologies, they brought the false image of Christ, the image of the beast, and they told the people, "Hey, worship this," right? And I forget exactly what scripture it is because it's like I said, I went over it a couple weeks ago. But as far as whoso diggeth a pit will fall therein, I think it's at the end of Proverbs 16. I could be mistaken. Y'all bear with me 1 second. Could be the end of Proverbs 19. Let's go to Proverbs 16 first. I think it's Proverbs 19 though. The one about digging a pit will fall therein. No. It might be Proverbs 19. Again, y'all bear with me. It says it many times in the Psalm as well. But there was one in Proverbs that I had gotten last time I did this lesson, but I forgot it. No, not 19 either. If I can't find it, then I'll forget it. You know, I'll move on. But no. I don't think it's 18 either. Like I said, I might just drop it and move on. There's something in the Proverbs as well as far as digging a pit and falling therein. Yeah, I thought that was the end of Proverbs 18. I know I skipped over Proverbs 21 there, but it could be that. So y'all forgive me. Like I said, it's been a minute. It's been a few weeks since I read this. Where's it at here? I might have to look it up, but the point is that let's see if I can't think of the Psalms. Maybe Psalm 141. I was reading that earlier today, and there was something there that reminded me of it. It's not exactly what I was looking for, but it may be the same concept. If it ain't here, then I'll just move on and continue with the point of let's see. Yeah, so this is the same point. Yeah, so Psalm 141, and I'll start with 8. But mine eyes are unto thee, O God, the Lord, and thee is my trust. Leave not my soul destitute. Keep me from the snares which they have laid for me, and the gins of the workers of iniquity. Right, gin being a trap. All right. Let the wicked fall into their own nets, whilst that I withal escape. Right. So I go to that just to bring up the point that the hateful people who come over here bringing the false religion, the false idols that come with Christianity in the modern day. They brought this image of Caesar Borgia and said, "This is Jesus. Worship this or die." Right. That's what they told the natives. That's what they told the so-called black people. They said, which basically, hey, like worship us. Right. Worship white people, right? So that white supremacist ideology was kind of baked into the foundation of America, right? So that white supremacist ideology carried on through like all the way up until Jim Crow, right? Carried on, all right, even into the modern day. But that idea of hatred that self-hatred they wanted to instill in the so-called black and Latino, right, in the indigenous and in the 12 tribes of the children of Israel, right? They wanted to lay that snare, lay that trap, hey, fall into this self-hatred. Well, guess what? Now the Edomites are falling into that as well with Clavicular, with Dorgan, right? Now they hate themselves too, right? So this idea of hatred and self-hatred, that's never the way for anybody to succeed. It's always going to be a failure. It's always going to be you falling into your own traps, into your own nets, as it says here, all right? But all that began with idolatry. For the ungodly and his ungodliness are both alike hateful unto God. Right? So there ain't no God hates the sin, loves the sinner. He hates the sin and the sinner. All right? Because it's both hateful to him. For that which is made shall be punished together with him that made it. You see that right there? So the idols, when God judges this land, when God judges the world on Judgment Day, the idols going to burn up, right? Because they're nothing. All right? They're going to be destroyed. They're going to be shattered. Therefore, even upon the idols of the Gentiles, there shall be a visitation. Because in the creature of God, they are become an abomination and stumbling blocks to the souls of men, and a snare to the feet of the unwise. For the devising of idols was the beginning of spiritual fornication, and the invention of them the corruption of life. For they were never from the beginning, for neither were they from the beginning, neither shall they be forever. Right. So I just wanted to point that out, that this chapter is about idolatry, jumping down to some of the symptoms of idolatry. All right. I'll start with verse 21. And this was an occasion to deceive the world. For men, serving either calamity or tyranny, did ascribe unto stones and stocks the incommunicable name. Right. So they called the name of God. They called a wooden cross the name of God. They called like the cobblestone. They called it the name of God. Stocks and stones, wood and rocks. Right. Wood and stone. Moreover, this was not enough for them that they erred in the knowledge of God, but whereas they lived in the great war of ignorance, those so great plagues called they peace. Right? People think it's peaceful now, but no, we're in a spiritual war. People think we're at peace right now here in America, but like they think, oh, the war is not here. We're good. There ain't never gonna be war over here. There's a war here right now, a spiritual war going on. All right, and guess what? Y'all losing. Y'all losing big time. All right. It's time to come back to the Most High. For while they slew their children in sacrifices, or used secret ceremonies, or made revelings of strange rites, right, like all that Epstein crap, all right. They had the little Bell temple on the island, all right. They kept neither lives nor marriages any longer undefiled, but either one slew another traitorously, or grieved him by adultery. right? So all the sin started from this idolatry. So that there reigned in all men without exception blood, manslaughter, theft, and dissimulation, corruption, unfaithfulness, tumults, perjury, disquieting of good men, forgetfulness of good terms, defiling of souls, changing of kind. And when you look out to the side in the KJV, in a 1611 KJV, when it says kind here, it says sex, right? So changing of sex. This trans ideology isn't like a new thing, right? It's just commonly accepted in the culture now, all right? This thing's been around damn near forever, right? Because it came from idolatry, all right? It came from the self-hatred that comes with idolatry. Disorder in marriages, adultery, and shameful uncleanness for the worshiping of idols not to be named is the beginning, the cause, and the end of all evil. Right? So anything evil or sinful you can think of, it stems from idolatry. Right? It stems from idolatry. So with that being said, I want to get Ephesians 5, and I'll wrap it up after this. Ephesians 5, and I wish I would have remembered to bring that camera down so y'all could have seen all the articles I went through, but all praises to the Most High, I was able to remember to bring it down to show y'all the scriptures. All right, so y'all seen like the headlines at least, or at least the HTTPS, I forget what that's called. The link, y'all seen the links. Y'all can go back and look at it on your own time if you want to. Honestly, I wouldn't advise it. If y'all heard what I was saying, that was enough. Ephesians 5, I'll start with verse 1. It says, "Be ye therefore followers of God as dear children." Right? So the way a child follows their parents around, that's how we should follow God. "And walk in love, as Christ also hath loved us, and hath given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling savor." All right? So walk in love, as Christ loved us. "But fornication and all uncleanness or covetousness, let it not be once named among you as becometh saints." Right? So if Paul tells us to walk in love, but don't walk in fornication, don't walk in uncleanness, don't walk in covetousness, then those things must be what? Hatred. All right, if I look at you, like let's take covetousness for example. If I look at you and I look at something that you got and I say, I want that, that's me hating you. I can't just be happy for you. Why I gotta want what you got? All right? It's one thing to be like, man, hey, that woman is very successful. I would also like to be successful. But no, to be like, I want what you have, and now I hate you because you have it and I don't. I'm jealous of you. That's hatred. That's foolishness. All right? All uncleanness, you're eating unclean things, you're doing unclean things. All right, obviously you hate God if you're not going by what his word says about being clean and unclean. All right, and fornication, if you're going around having sex with, doing any manner of sexual immorality that you read about in Leviticus 18, but specifically like having sex with women that you don't plan on marrying, then, why are you doing that? It's because you hate them. You don't love them. You don't want to provide a better life for them. All right. "Neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor jesting, which are not convenient, but rather giving of thanks." Right? So saying and doing things that God would find suitable, right? Appropriate. "For this ye know that no whoremonger, nor unclean person, nor covetous man who is an idolater hath any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God." All right? "Let no man deceive you with vain words, for because of these things cometh the wrath of God upon the children of disobedience." Right? So don't let anybody deceive you saying it's all right to do any of these things. All right? Let no man deceive you in that manner, because God brings wrath upon people for doing these things. "Be not ye therefore partakers with them." All right? So don't be partaking in these sinful things. Why? Because that's hateful to God. All right? "For ye were sometimes darkness, but now are ye light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness and righteousness and truth, proving what is acceptable unto the Lord." Right? So that's what we should be. We should be acceptable unto the Lord. Present ourselves in that acceptable manner. "And have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them." Right? Because Christ ate with the sinners and the publicans, but what did he do? He corrected them. He reproved them. He didn't partake in the same things that they partook in. All right? "For it is a shame even to speak of those things which are done of them in secret, right? So the things they do behind closed doors, he said it's not even appropriate to say some of those things, all right? But all things that are reproved are made manifest by the light, for whatsoever doth make manifest is light, right? That's what the light does. It shows you what's in the room, right? Wherefore he saith, awake thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. All right. So with all that being said, be children of the light. That light has to come from within. Obviously, it comes from God first. Then that love, that light has to be within. And then it can be shown to others. All right. So with all that being said, let me go ahead and close it out with the benediction. All right. I believe that's the same as it was earlier, but yeah, I wish I would have remembered to brought that down, but it is what it is. Y'all at least got the scriptures, I hope. Matthew 26. And I'll start with verse 6. Now, when Jesus was in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, there came unto him a woman having an alabaster box of very precious ointment, and poured it on his head as he sat at meat. But when his disciples saw it, they had indignation, saying, to what purpose is this waste? But his ointment might have been sold for much and given to the poor. When Jesus understood it, he said unto them, why trouble ye the woman? For she hath wrought a good work upon me. For you have the poor always with you, but me you have not always. For in that she hath poured this ointment on my body, she did it for my burial. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached in the whole world, there shall also this that this woman have done be told for a memorial of her. So with that, all praises to the Most High, in the name of his Son, his word, Jesus the Christ. And I do so by his Holy Ghost, by his Holy Spirit. But yeah, Lord's will, I will get y'all that video Sunday. I may post it on Sunday, may post it on Monday concerning the Passover. All right. We will be keeping the Passover in Boonville, Lord's will. Y'all reach out. If y'all want to participate, y'all want to take part. It's one of those, what I call the big three feast days. All right. Again, I'll go into that in that video. So y'all check that out. It's the time of cleaning out all leavening, which symbolically is the sin. All right. So it's one of the times of the year when the Most High gives us an opportunity to draw nearer unto him. All right. So with all that being said, hope y'all learned something. I'm going to say shalom, happy Sabbath, and let God be magnified.